Yo, what's up everyone, LegendBegins here. We've got a slightly different kind of video today, but specifically, I have had the opportunity to go through the Switch 2 experience recently. And I thought this would be a really neat opportunity to give my thoughts, some of what I got to experience hands-on with the Switch 2, and ultimately maybe give you some insight that you wouldn't be getting from the press. So fortunately, I had the really cool opportunity to apply to this sweepstakes that Nintendo was putting on. They had an experience in a number of major cities all across the United States, and one relatively near me happened to be a city that was on that list. And so I applied to the sweepstakes. I allowed a couple of other people to enter with me, and we lost. We actually didn't win the sweepstakes. But once you don't succeed in getting the sweepstakes tickets, they open up a waiting list for you that once somebody cancels their entry, your name gets drawn out of that waiting list. So it's an ordered queue. And they effectively give you a time. You offer them a number of different times that you're available. And if one of those times comes up, first come, first served, you can tell them whether or not that works for you and whether you want that person's tickets. So the second the day and time pops up that we can enter the queue, I am on that. I have my submission in, and sure enough, a few days later, I get the email that, congratulations, you've won a Switch 2 experience on one of the last days that they're putting it on. So I get the opportunity to go in, and overall, you should be seeing some footage on the screen. It was a very cool experience. I had a great time, got some hands-on with unreleased games, and I'm just going to go through an order. For starters, right, like I had to wait in line a little bit. We got there maybe 15 minutes early, and so we were directed toward the front of the building, stood in line for, like I said, about 15 minutes while our time came up. The entire timeline of the event was pretty well regulated. They had strict time limits put in place for every group that entered into the facilities in order to keep things moving along. So I actually did appreciate how it was a multi-staged experience, and they made sure that there was always something for you to do while another group was out there playing something or interacting with something else. So we go through, exit through this line, we get these cool badges, and we enter the first room, which is effectively a showcase, where you can get some hands-on with the console that's powered off, so more or less feeling the dimensions, playing around with the Joycons. By the way, if you hated the Joycons on rails in the Switch 1, and I'm kind of with you there, the new ones are really good. They're held by magnets, and I couldn't really tell if there was a physical interface that was holding it attached whenever you didn't push the button, or if it was purely magnetic. Based off of how strong it was, I think there has to be a physical interface in there. But I could be completely wrong, and it might be entirely magnetic. I mean, it was not going anywhere. The release was much more satisfying. It has more of the Switch OLED style stand, except it's even lighter. They have a hole cut out, but it didn't really feel any less sturdy. So they've fixed the issues with the Switch 1's original stand, which it beats me why they ever put that stand in the system to begin with, but your guess is as good as mine. So once we got some hands-on, we got to look around, we got to see the accessories for the console. They have brand new Switch, Joy-Con inserts, the thing you can use to use the Joy-Cons in standalone mode. And they look way better now than they ever have in the past, way more comfortable than the previous versions. But they would walk us through some of the more physical features while we waited, and then they paired us up in 2x2s. Now, I was in a group of 3, and of course, as you all, I'm sure know, the most lovingly social and interactive person of the 3 of us. That's a joke, but regardless, I got paired off with some stranger I didn't know. He was wearing a sick Mario Sunshine shirt that I didn't take a picture of to respect his privacy. But we were chatting a little bit about which games we were excited about. I mentioned, Donkey Kong, Bonanza or whatever, looks pretty good. And we get thrown into a room just decked out wall to wall with screens playing the new Mario Kart World. So we go through, we get the opportunity to do a couple of demo rounds, we do a race, and it's just to basically get some hands-on with the controls. Unfortunately for me, my brother was also there in the facilities, who is a Mario Kart pro. Like, the dude is unbeatable. And he fortunately asked a question I would have thought of, asking whether or not it was possible to disable the auto steering, at least for the demo experience. And unfortunately, it wasn't. The entire time it was set on auto accelerate and then kind of the auto steer or whatever they call it. And so it made it both easier and harder at the same time. There were aspects to the game that I thought were awesome, and then there were other aspects that I think that really took away from the experience a little bit. But overall, it was really neat. You got to play a little bit in the open world mode, driving around, and really just get a feel for what the game is like. But the real magic of the entire event occurred right after that point. So they gave us maybe like 10, 20 minutes, probably closer to 10 to 15, of hands-on time working with just getting the controls down. But then they push us a little bit further. And in that part of the room, we're all given a Switch Pro controller, all given our own monitor. And we have the opportunity to go head-to-head with the other individuals who came in with us in a 24-player deathmatch, where effectively the bottom 4 players are knocked out every checkpoint. It was crazy. Every time we got to a checkpoint, everybody would coalesce, we'd all get new items, and the entire stage would be exploding with all kinds of wacky power-ups. So that was a lot of fun. And I'm going to be really positive about this experience, but I want to give the caveat, and it's something I observed with my brother, that the experience that they're selling there is not matching the experience that most of the audience would be buying. That kind of 24-player hype, a room full of people buzzing with excitement, is something that's really hard to coordinate and something really hard to get together. Most of the time, we're probably going to be like playing in our room, either solo or maybe on a couch, in which case it's still fun, but you can't replicate the kind of experience that we would have had in that moment. And so I can't really give it to the Switch 2 as a selling point for an individual buying the console. Now, if you're like running an event, sure, why not? But that being said, I do want to give the event credit that aspect of it was really fun. And I'll give my final thoughts on whether the Switch 2 is worth it as we get closer to the end. Hopefully, if I've remembered, we'll add timestamps to the video so you can skip ahead to whatever chapter you'd like. But we go through the race. I get knocked out. I'm like position like 8 or 14 or something. Not as good as I wanted to do. I was in first place at one time. I was playing as Donkey Kong, and they were playing on 50cc. I'll blame the controller. I don't know. I'm not as good as Mario Kart as some other people out there. But once that's done, I went and watched my brother play, and I'm actually glad that I got knocked out, because that's how I got this footage for you guys. He was in first place like the entire time, when just at the very end, the opponent squeaks past and gets first, and he gets second. But overall, just we were cheering, we were excited. The entire thing was just a huge, radiant burst of energy. So we finish up with Mario Kart, and they push us into the main play area. And lining the walls of the entrance of the play area, we just have rows upon rows of Donkey Kong Donkey Kong Bonanza. And that along with Mario Kart World really seemed to be what Nintendo was trying to sell the console on right now. And that game, it was fun. I liked it. There were aspects of it that almost gave me vibes of Super Mario Odyssey combined with Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And I'm sure some of you out there are like, that sounds like the greatest game ever made. And I'm sure for a lot of you, this would be an amazing game. And it's fun. I don't know. The thing that I like the most about the game is also the thing I'm most concerned about. Because in this game, right, the entire environment is destructible. You basically get to dig wherever you want as Donkey Kong. And that was an incredible amount of freedom. I really, really enjoyed that aspect. But at the same time, right, there's something that got, like, I don't want to call it a little bit samey about it, but I feel like in my gut, by the time I finish the game, might be a little sick of just digging around over and over. It's clearly like a spiritual successor to Donkey Kong 64 in a sense. That's kind of the previous Donkey Kong game that they're drawing out of as like an overworld or open world collectathon. But I don't know. I love the digging mechanic. I thought it was super cool, but there's something about it that I feel, again, like I'm going to be tired of the mechanic by the end of it. And I don't know if it's just the digging, but there's some aspect of even Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and this I might get some people who are very upset at me for saying. That game, it was a lot of fun. They had a lot of cool ideas, a lot of cool set pieces, but it didn't necessarily always feel that engaging. You would be going throughout a stage, and it's like, okay, I see what I need to do, I can do it, and even if it was a little challenging, there are aspects to Kirby and the Forgotten Land that end up feeling a little bit like, okay, like, I get it, but it's just, it doesn't feel like I don't even want to say like I'm being challenged, but it doesn't feel that gamey to me. It feels almost more like watching a show. And there are aspects of Donkey Kong Bonanza that also feel similar to that. It's a very difficult feeling to describe. But in the end, I guess maybe it felt like I had less agency, even though it felt like I had a ton of agency over what I did with the destructible environments. I don't know. Maybe this is just Legend being absolutely weird about the kind of games he'd like. Because I do think I would enjoy the game, but there's something about it that just felt a little bit off. Who knows? That could just be me being crazy. But let's move on. After the Donkey Kong room, we went forward and we had a room that was just dedicated to Switch demo experiences. Now, when coming in, they gave us a badge that had 6 squares on the back. It was a game's passport. And that gave you access to 6 titles of your choosing, and once you finished the 6 titles, you were done. And they were like 10 to 20-minute demos. And that was more than enough time. I definitely didn't feel like I was shortchanged. And they had a number of really cool games available. Just to list some off the top, they had Hogwarts Legacy, they had Breath of the Wild, they had Cyberpunk 2077, which surprised me for a family-friendly event. They had the Switch GameCube library. They had Hades 2 demos, which I wish I had thought about that for just a second longer. Because I've actually never played Hades, I would like to. But it struck me just a few minutes ago that Hades 2 is not out yet. And so I would have had some chance to get some footage and hands-on with an unreleased game. But I had others that I was playing instead, and so I didn't feel shortchanged at all. Kirby and the Forgotten Land was there. A game called Split Fiction was there, which is kind of like Take-Two with, or It Takes Two with like past and present mechanics. They didn't have any Pokemon XZ, unfortunately. I was hoping it would be there. And there was no Hollow Knight Silk Song. So, you know, give and take, they had some really good titles, but the ones that I was most excited about is that the free play room had Metroid Prime 4, which everyone has been hyped about for ages now, and I actually just got into Metroid like a year or two ago. But I played through the original on NES, which frankly you can skip. I don't think it holds up that well. I played through Super Metroid, which is phenomenal, but you'll probably need a guide because, like, wow, finding everything is a pain. I played through Metroid Fusion, which is amazing. I played through Dread, which takes the best parts of both Fusion and Super, and then finally I'm getting a chance to get some hands-on time with Metroid Prime 4. My initial impressions of the game is that it was really fun. It's very pretty. The mouse mechanic. So the Switch 2 comes with the feature where you can use a Joy-Con on any flat surface, even your leg, they officially claim, and you're effectively using it as a mouse. They even have, in the new Joy-Con holsters, I guess a little glass pad or something that operates in mouse mode, like basically as a mouse would, and gives you a lower friction environment to slide it around. And while I thought it worked well enough in terms of tracking, to be frank, it was like really uncomfortable. I could see myself getting carpal tunnel. And when the employees asked, like, that was my main piece of feedback, that yeah, it works okay, but like this is uncomfortable to hold. And I'm sure there are going to be third-party accessories that turn it into an actual mouse eventually, and that will probably feel a lot better. Pro tip, if you're out there and you don't have one, get a vertical mouse. As of right now, a lot of them don't have great sensors. They're not gaming mouses or mice, depending on how you pronounce it. But the comfort and the long-term health is definitely worth it. I could never go back. That being beside the point, the mouse is uncomfortable, and so you might have to get used to that or just switch back to normal control mode. They had everything that could be set to mouse for this, so just to give you some hands-on with some of the new features. The employees overall throughout the entire event were incredibly incredibly nice. Overall, they seemed excited to be there. They seemed excited that we were there. They were definitely like pushing a product. They wanted us to walk away desiring to purchase a Switch 2. We had some questions of like, oh, have you pre-ordered? Have you bought one? Like all of that. I don't love pre-ordering a lot of the time, especially software. Hardware, it's a little bit different, but even with the Switch 2, like I said, I'll get to my thoughts at the end. I think there are some concerns with the price, and it's not really so much with the system itself, but with the games, and there's a whole argument on like, okay, games inflation, but more player base, whatever. I don't want to get into that today, and y'all can let me know if that's something you want to see more of in the future, but we're not going to promise anything. But regardless, the employees were very nice, but they were also at times a little bit cagey. I got out my phone to film a couple of the experiences, and at first it didn't seem like the messaging was fully consistent. The ladies were like, hey, we need you to step back, to zoom out. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, do you want me to take a picture of the title bar above each individual game? Like, what are you trying to get from me? And eventually they stopped like bugging me about it. But a guy later, when I went to the Donkey Kong game, was like, hey, our policy is that if you're going to take footage, your hands need to be in it or your body needs to be in it. And I'm like, that is really weird. And he said something about not wanting people to claim that they have like a leaked copy of the game. I have no idea if that's their actual reasoning, but it seemed very strange to me because I very much could just crop my hands out, as you've probably seen me do more than once now. So I don't really understand what their purpose was in the rule, and I'm definitely not trying to sneak around that. Like, it's their facility, I'll follow their rules and I'll take that footage, but I don't really understand what it accomplished. But that being beside the point, and a couple of instances where it felt like they were like, let's enforce these kind of arbitrary rules. I did get to play the new Drag X Drive game, which is like the wheelchair robot basketball 3-on-3 game. Fortunately, our team won. It was really hard to get footage of this just because of the fact that it was I wanted our team to win. I wanted to be a good team sport. And overall, the game was fun. It worked well enough. My hands, I don't think I'd have the stamina to play that game for very long, because you are effectively just pushing forward with both hands over and over again. And it's tiring, honestly. Like, it's definitely something that is going to wear you out sooner rather than later. And then a couple of times the theming feels a little bit weird to me, and I'm not normally like sensitive to this kind of thing, but I guess the theming of it being like wheelchair basketball and you're playing as effectively like a dude in a wheelchair, I don't know, it felt a little bit insensitive, and again, maybe that's just me being weird, maybe it was me being, put off kilter because of the recording thing, I don't know, but it was just one moment where I was like, it's a little bit weird, Nintendo. But the game was fun enough. I probably wouldn't buy it, even if it was pretty cheap, but it was a neat little demo getting to try it. I got to try the Mario Party Jamboree mouse minigames. Those were great. This was in a team of 4. There was a father, his son, and then just some dude next to me, and we were competing against the father and his son. And it was basically a 50-50 split between the games. There was an air hockey game, there was a painting game, which, by the way, I crushed the painting game. Like, it was no contest. But besides that, we got crushed on the air hockey. There was a game where you winded up a small toy car, and you could actually feel the notches in the wind-up being pulled back. The same thing with the Drag X Drive game, where you can feel the different notches in the wheelchair, which is really cool. Like, the HD haptics in the Switch 2 are rather impressive. And then after that, I went to the other Jamboree game. Each half actually did count as an individual game time. And this was Jamboree TV, where you're playing in Bowser's castle as one of his minions and competing against the other minions using the Switch camera. Initial thoughts, the Switch camera is not very good. It's low resolution, it doesn't track very well. The mini games, they were funny, in the same way that playing something like, this will date the video, but like Repo, or, what's that one game where you try to make each other laugh? Oh, the found footage game. It's escaping me at the moment. But regardless, something like that, where it's like, it almost feels like one of those games where it's intended to be a little jank, because that's where you get your laughs. But unfortunately, I don't really think that that is the intent of the game. So we played one where the goal was to keep Goombas balanced on your head. We played a second minigame. And then the last one, which ended up actually counting more than the first two, was just to wave your arms as much as possible, do as much movement, and shout into the microphone as loudly as you could. Which, like, I'm sure was obnoxious to the people around us, but I sure had fun. And it allowed our team to be the employees of the organization. The event venue. And so, yeah, we ended up winning that. That was pretty fun. And then I closed it out with trying out Switch Welcome Tour. Because that's the game that a lot of us are not that happy with. It's basically a get to know the different features of the Switch 2, and you got to pay for it. So you got to pay for a tech demo. And I know that's the nature of Nintendo, but no excuses. I would not pay money for this game. It had one like bullet curtain segment where you used it in mouse mode to avoid incoming asteroids. And this game actually didn't count as one of the plays against your badge on the passport. And like, honestly, I could have sat there and played the asteroid game like the entire time. I love bullet curtain games. I love Galaga. I love Toho games. So it was right up my alley. I didn't get the highest level achievement, which is like surviving for a minute. I wanted to, and I would have sat there and done it, but I felt like the employees staring at me, and I was like, okay, I'll play some of these others. And then they had some demos, like, oh, here's HDR, here's it without HDR. Let's see if you can pick up on 30 versus 60 versus 120 frames per second to show off the high refresh rate of the Switch 2, even though we were playing it on a TV, and the TV didn't have good HDR. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, they had a fireworks demo for the HDR. Didn't look good on the TV. You just like couldn't tell. But I'm sure it looks better on the console itself, and it would look even better if they had an OLED screen. Which brings us to some of my final thoughts. But first, upon leaving the event, we handed in our main armband. They just cut it off, threw it away, we were done. And they gave us actually a pretty nice backpack as like a thank you for joining us gift. And that I really respect. I think this is probably going to become a classic piece of merch that people see in 20 years. Or it's going to end up on the shelf of your local retro game store for $15. Either one could be the case. But it's a relatively nice backpack, and we got a Nintendo Switch 2 sticker. So that was pretty cool. Overall, I loved the experience. It was a lot of fun. And I really... It's hard to say this. I don't think it sold me on the Switch 2. I like the idea of the console. I like that it has a higher refresh rate display. I like the hardware's updated. Switch 1 was out of date when it came out, so it is far past the need for a refresh. But overall, I don't think I can personally say that the amount of fun I think I would have if I went out and purchased this console would be worth the price of the games as they're presenting them. Again, I'm not going to get into the argument on whether or not the prices are justified, but given me, and I could, frankly, I could afford the games if I really wanted to, but it's not worth the experience, in my opinion. And I think that Nintendo cheaped out on certain areas, and I mean, you could argue that, okay, well, they gave you the price the market would bear, whatever. But certain areas that I feel like they just want to upsell in the future, like the lack of an OLED display. Are we really going back to LCD in 2025? Like that feels a little bit unnecessary to me. I don't think that Nintendo has a great excuse for not putting in an OLED display. Yes, it would be a little more expensive. Yes, it would be worth it. The colors are just so much better on an OLED. Granted, the screen looks nice. I think the Switch 2 screen is a cut above the Switch 1's. But why are we taking a step back just for you to sell this console back to me in 4 years for $50 more? I just feel like that's a little bit unfair to the customers who are already shelling out a lot more for this console than they ever have for a Nintendo system in the past. Excluding, I don't know, maybe the Virtual Boy adjusted for inflation. And again, there are arguments with inflation I won't get into. Second, the games. The games were fun. I enjoyed Donkey Kong. If I had a Switch 2 and I just wanted to play the games and I could get them, like, let's say the library was available to me, I would play that game. I would play the Mario Kart game. They both seem pretty fun. But overall, I don't think they're compelling enough for the price that Nintendo is asking. I wouldn't pay $80 for those games. Like, and maybe I'm just cheap. Like, I wouldn't have paid full price for, like, pretty much any game. I get everything on sale. But ultimately, I'm just not compelled enough when we have a super saturated gaming market with tons tons of other complex, rich experiences that are a lot of fun. So for me, even though it has that Nintendo polish that we all know and love, I just don't think it justifies the price. Now, let me give you a counter. Who is the Switch 2 for? Who is the correct audience for this console? And I think that if you made it through without a Switch 1, or your Switch 1 is about to die, or you feel like your games are not up to spec on the Switch 1, except for Pokemon, because that's going to be bad on the Switch 2 too in terms of performance, just trust me. That's another discussion debate that we could get into, but I'll skip that. Yell at me in the comments if you want. It will help my engagement. Also, subscribing is free, so please remember to do that. But that being said, if you don't have a Switch 1, or your Switch 1 is old, or dying, or broken, the Switch 2, I would actually suggest getting instead of a Switch 1 if you're looking to replace or get a Switch for the first time. The backwards compatibility, in my opinion, makes it a no-brainer. Even if you could get a brand new Switch 1 for like $200. The fact that the hardware at this point is probably pushing on like 8 to 10 years, given that it was old when it came out, really makes the new hardware, from a capability standpoint, compelling at the price point that they bring it if this is your first console. If you have a Switch OLED, and you're not compelled by the games that they have, and your Switch OLED is in fine condition, that's where I'm at. I am not personally going to go out and get a Switch 2. If they drop the price of the games, maybe. If they come out with an OLED edition and something massively changes in the market, maybe. Like, it's hard to say. If I win the lottery tomorrow, probably not still. I'm pretty frugal when it comes to the value of my experiences. But the Switch 2, in its current state, I had fun at the experience. Thank you, Nintendo, for giving me the opportunity. In terms of products that I'm purchasing, it's not at a point in its current lifespan where I think the value it brings is compelling for the price at which they're requesting it. And that's where I stand. But let me know where you fall, where you stand in the comments down below. I would love to hear whether or not the Switch 2 meets your expectations. And we'll see. Maybe it'll be a huge blowout. People will pull money out of places that I had no idea that they had money to begin with, and we will see what happens after that. Big credits to very near and dear family member Sil for recording this. Thank you so much for much of the footage. And again, let me know what you all think in the comments down below, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.